All right. So yesterday we did, I talked a little about detox supplementation and how important it is, the chemicals we put in our body, how much our body needs those chemicals to actually do its job. However, I want to make sure that we understand that the nutrition is, while extremely important, the chemistry is very, very important. However, the food and the supplements you put in your body are not the only part of your diet. It's really, really important that we understand, and this is why the mental piece is such a big part of what we do. You have to understand that the way you think, the things that you put into your world, the music you listen to, the books you read, the stuff that's on your feed and social media, that all plays a major role in what goes on and who you are. Your education, the continual education or indoctrination you get into is really, really, really important. When we look at, a lot of times when we have generational strife, right? Where, people who are 10 years older than you look back and they're like, why do you think the way you do? Why do you act? Where's your ethics and your work ethic, morals, all those things? Where did you guys get those? It's from the education they got, the music they were listening to, the video games they were playing, the media that they were taking in. That is a major, major, major part of what goes on in somebody. You can totally change the way somebody, processes, acts, thinks by changing the amount of information they put in. Maybe this is one of the reasons we do things like gratitudes. There's a lot of other things that we do, but that's one of those things. When you start focusing on, like, for instance, take gratitudes as a great example. When you start focusing on the things that are positive in your life, the things you were happy about, the things that you were grateful for, you start noticing them more. You start noticing the things that you're grateful for easier. So when something happens, you're like, oh, thanks. You're like, oh, I'm going to count that as a gratitude today. Oh, that's fantastic. That was really nice. Like that type of thing. Like as you start to focus your energy on the positives, you start to not only see the positives, you start to create the positives. So you start seeing, hey, I like that this thing happened, so I'm going to do more of it. And then you start becoming, nicer to your kids. You start becoming, better all the way around. These are the things that we have to recognize and kind of bring in. It's funny because a lot of times, for instance, there's with the big Paris Olympics things, which was obviously, they're trying to say it was obviously a shot at Christianity. A lot of people are like, I don't understand why you're so mad. Well, it's because our core values are set that way. And it's funny because when you go over core values with people, like when you sit down, you start going through things and you go, well, what are your core values? Like as a basic understanding of who you are, what are your core values? And people go, what are you talking about? I'm like, well, what are the things that you hold very important? The ideals you uphold, like, integrity and, that type of thing. And they go, I don't know. Like, because they haven't sat down and been like, what is it that I find good in the world? What is it that I find important? What standard do I want to hold myself and my family to? That has started to fall apart quite a bit. The idea that, you even have to teach people like what core values are and how to develop them and how to adhere to them is kind of interesting. And again, no one's going to be phenomenal at their own core values. It's just the things that we all try to strive to be. Integrity is one of mine. And there's a story I tell about my business partner and I were working on a deal. And I was looking to sell my Aston Martin. And he was like, how much do you want for it? And I was like, it's a classic Aston. It was older. And I didn't want to sell a car to a friend of mine if I thought there was going to be problems with it. And so we were working on these two deals. And I was like, look, if you can get these two deals done, I was like, I'll just give it to you. There was a very slim chance he was going to get either one of those deals done, let alone both of them. Ends up he got both of them done. And so I gave him my Aston. And he was like, you don't have to do that. And I was like, no, I said I was going to. And he was like, yeah, but you were joking. I was like, I still said it. So it was one of those things that, that meant more to me than it did to him because I was trying to live by my core values. And again, I'm not perfect at it, but that's, when somebody blatantly comes up at me, I usually make the right call on that one. But those are some of those things. And that one was not fun. But knowing that I went ahead and stood by, my integrity, my core value stuff, that was, like I said, it was more for me. But it's that type of thing. So like when you start looking at your world start looking at the music you're listening to. Be like, what are the lyrics? You know, what's going on? What are they talking about? You know, I liked a lot of the music from today, but it's all about cheating on people, getting cheated on, drugs. Like there's all sorts of things. I'm just like, all right, I can kind of do without that. And so, you know, I've kind of moved off of that. I've gone back to a lot of the 80s music, which is just better. But when you start looking at the things that you allow in your field, in your life, how negative are they? You know, if you look at the news, and this is the problem with the news tells you a lot of things that are really negative because there's a lot of really negative things going on in the world. But the problem is that you have no power to solve any of them. Like there was a big, you know, mudslide in India that killed like 100 people. That's sad. That's terrible. I can't fix that. You know, and you're like, well, I just want to be informed. How does that help you? How does that, like, oh, we have to make sure we're not around places with mudslides. If that's the information you got, great. Don't be around places with mudslides. But there's lots of things that are going on, you know, that you have very little control over. You know, maybe you want to get the snippets of stuff, but look what's in your feed. Is it negativity after negativity after negativity? You know, I hate Kamala Harris, I hate Trump, whatever it is. Or is it, you know, positive things that are building you up and kind of helping you kind of move forward? I've got a lot of philosophy and stoicism, stuff like that on mine. I'm in part of a couple of groups. Apex, you know, is one of the groups that I follow, and a lot of the guys in there post really, really, you know, great stuff. They talk about their wins. They talk about the things that are, you know, going well in their life. They talk about the things that, you know, they had a struggle with and they overcame it, and this is how they overcame it. So if you have the same issue, maybe you should try this. There's lots of that. It's in my feed, and there's lots of times where I'm like, oh, that's a great idea. I didn't think of that, because there's multiple different professions in there. There's roofers in there, there's plumbers in there, there's, you know, business coaches, there's all sorts of guys in there, but they're all throwing positive feedback out into the world, you know, things they've overcome, personal things they've overcome. I would stress that you start to find those things. So sit down and figure out, what are your core values? What is it that, you know, what makes you the better person? You know, what would, if you sit down and you're like, if I started doing these things, I would be a better person in my own judgment, right? You know, those type of things. Write those down. Like, these are the things that I want to adhere to. These are the things that I want to strive to be better at. You know, these are, you know, universal truths. Like, integrity is good. You know, being honest is good. Hardworking is good. You know, things to that degree. Everybody has, it's funny because everybody will come down to like, this is important to me. And you're like, okay, well, that's in this umbrella, you know, and so you can specify on, you know, you want to keep a really clean car. Okay, that's cool. Like that's good, but it falls into a specific vertical. So a lot of these type of things will also help take control of your life. So for instance, when Jordan Peterson talks about cleaning your room, the reason that you want to clean your room is because that is a small thing that you have total control over. And then once you start to understand that you have control over that, you start moving out. You just clean your room, clean your house, clean your yard, you know, start cleaning up everything else around you, you know, those type of things. Then you kind of go out into the city and that type of thing. It's kind of it's not necessarily in the same vein as Maslow's hierarchy of needs, but it's like, do something small, master that, and then take that idea and make it a little bit bigger, But that's the thing. So when we start trying to look at, you know, how do we holistically improve our overall health, you're going to have to start examining your life. You're going to have to start examining what you allow into your field, what you allow into your life, and you're going to have to start making, you know, cuts and be like, this doesn't serve the person I want to be, and so I'm going to take it out. And that's probably the hardest thing to do, especially by yourself. But, you know, this is one of those things that, you know, therapists do really well with. So if you have a therapist, ask them to help you kind of walk down that road. If you don't have a therapist, maybe it's time you get one. Life coaches are pretty decent at this too. This is one of those great things. Like, we do this with you know, some NLP, some other stuff, but this is one of those things that is a great thing for a coach to do. When people ask me like, hey, you do a lot of mental work, right? I'm like, yeah. And they're like, so are you a therapist? No. When we get to things that need specific therapy, we send people out for that. So, you know, hey, I need to sit down and figure out my core values. I need to figure out what's going to make me better as a human being. Cool. I can help you with that. You know, I was raped by my uncle when I was 6. Not my field. You need to go talk to somebody who's trained specifically in that. So that's how that works. The mental thing is gigantic. And so there's verticals that all sorts of people can help you with. But that's one of those that you guys, if you can self kind of do that, where you can start looking at your world and being like, what am I allowing in? And just go through. And the first couple of times, it's going to be, really shallow. You're not going to cut a lot of stuff out. But look at it and be like, does this message that I'm getting from this book or from this music or from this TV show or this whatever, does this push me in the direction where I want to go? Does this, feed into the core values that I've established for myself that make me the better person? If it does, great, stick with them. If it doesn't, you might want to try to cut them out and try to find something a little bit, more in line with where your beliefs of what makes you a good person lie. And if you haven't sat down and been like, what is the things that make me a good person? Like, what are the things that I should strive to be if I want to be a better person? I think you should sit down and try to write those down. Like, figure that out. If you need help with it, find somebody who helps with that type of thing and figure it out. Because that's going to be, as far as your mental piece goes, that's going to be one of the basic starting points of where you're trying to get to. You have to find a base of what's important to you from a philosophical standpoint, and then start feeding into those philosophical pillars or verticals so that you can get where you want to go. I just, I met with the pastor of my church, and one of the things I'm going to start doing is reading more Wesleyan philosophy. Some of the stuff that he said, he quoted some Wesleyan philosophy to me, and I thought it was fantastic. And so I'm going to start doing more reading into the Wesleyan stuff. But that's the type of thing. So if you guys are thinking about doing that, I would 100% tell you lean into that one, because that's going to make the biggest change in your life of who you are and that type of thing. Because people are like, well, how do I know if I should cut this person out of my life? Well, do they stand with or against your core values? And people go, well, I don't know, but they're real negative. I'm like, well, they're probably standing against your core values. You just haven't defined your core values. So sit down, figure that out, put your core values down. What do you want to live in? What do you want to adhere to? What do you want to live by? Like, what's important to you? And then build that out. But that's the thing. So remember that a lot of what's going on in your world affects you as a person. And if you don't recognize it, it's affecting you on a subconscious level. So spend a minute or two and kind of think about that, and think about what influences you're letting in your life on you, because it's going to end up on you and on your kids and on everybody around you. So look at that. A lot of people haven't. If you guys need help with that, find somebody who helps with that. The Apex guys are pretty good at that. We do some of that. So that's the biggest thing. So figure out what's going on into your head and try to filter it. Thanks for your time.